Have you ever been going through a storm in your life and wondered, God, why are you allowing me to go through this?
Welcome to the podcast with your host, Craig T. Owens. Craig's new book, When Sheep Bite, is available now at craigtowens.com.
If anyone had been through his share of storms, it would be the Apostle Paul. Some of them were storms of words, people just speaking very negative things about him. Some of them had been storms of physical attacks against his body. But when we come to the last part of the book of Acts, Paul is in a physical storm. There's thunder and lightning and wind and rain, and he's on a ship in the middle of the ocean. Now let's back up a little bit. Paul is there because the religious leaders had been making false accusations against him, and they were trying to set him up to be killed the same way that they had dealt with Jesus. But Paul had appealed for his case to be heard before Caesar. And so he is bundled up along with some other prisoners and some Roman guards, and they are on a ship with the sailors and other passengers, and they're on their way, and they get caught in this storm. They sailed at a very poor time of year for sailing. The weather just wasn't conducive to that. But I have to imagine that Paul might have been sitting there at some point in this storm as he watches the crew throwing over all of the tackle. They start throwing off some of the grain and other supplies that would make them money when they got to a market somewhere. They're throwing that overboard. They're no longer even using the sails or the rudder. They're just letting the ship just be carried by the wind and the waves wherever it's going. And Paul's got to be saying, God, why are you allowing me to go through this storm? Maybe you think back to another story in the Bible of a man on a boat in the middle of a storm, the prophet Jonah. Now that storm came up specifically because of Jonah's disobedience to God. He was going the exact opposite way that God wanted him to go. And he knew it because when the sailors asked him, what have you done? He said, I'm running away from God. And that's why there's storm that is afflicting you. And as soon as they threw Jonah overboard, the storm immediately stopped. But that's not the case with Paul. Paul might have been thinking about that. Well, I understand why Jonah went through a storm, but why am I going through the storm? I'm not running away from God. I'm going the exact direction that God told me I would go. Aha. God had already told Paul that he was going to go to Caesar. In fact, he assured him, he said, Paul, you must testify about me before Caesar. But look at the rest of the crew. Luke writes this, and you'll hear this plural pronoun that he uses because it says, when neither sun nor stars appeared for many days and the storm continued raging, we, so Luke is including himself with this, finally gave up all hope of being saved. Everybody had even stopped eating on the ship. They were in complete despair. But it was at this time that Paul called the crew together. And he said, guys, listen, I want to tell you something. Last night, an angel that came from the God that I serve stood before me and reassured me of the promise I already have, that I must testify before Caesar in Rome. But then I love what he added. He says, God has graciously given me all of you as well. Not a hair on your head is going to be lost. The ship is going to be lost. We're going to shipwreck, but all of you are going to be saved as well. And he said, I believe it because God told it to me. And immediately after that, the crew takes up courage. In fact, they even have a bite to eat after that time. They'd been fasting for a while, just probably sick to their stomach or worried almost to death, but now they finally eat. So think about this. The storm that you are in right now, maybe you're there precisely because of the other people that are in the storm with you. Has God given you a word? Has he given you a promise? Has he given you an assurance to stand on? Has he given you encouragement? That word encouragement literally means to put courage into other people. Maybe you are going through this storm because you need to be the courage builder. You need to be the one who is encouraging the other people around you who are going through the storm as well. So instead of asking God, why are you allowing me to go through this storm? Maybe you need to change your perspective and say, God, who do I need to minister to in this storm? Who else needs a word of encouragement while they go through this storm as well. Think about that. The next time that you are in a rough place, God has placed you there. He has equipped you with what you need. He's placed other people around you so that you can give what you have to them. Be that encouragement in the midst of the storm.
Craig's new book, When Sheep Bite, is available now. To order, go to craigtowens.com.